So now we have moved from Nigeria, and I think we are going to Peru. And then from Peru, we are going to America. So from there, we keep moving on. So permit me to welcome our next speaker, Professor Ruben Garcia. So he is a teacher of English with 32 years of experience in ESL and ELT. He holds a degree in education and Masters of Applied Linguistics and TESOL by Macquarie University in Australia. So permit me this morning, because since today is our Transformational Leadership Conference, we want to welcome Professor Dr. Ruben Garcia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for this great opportunity to be here and talk about uh, something that is very, very important for all of us, which is important is to know what we deal with conflict, since that if we underlie all models of conflict, which are certain approaches or perspective on this social phenomenon within the eclectic literature on conflict research, it is possible to identify major approaches, each of which subsumes certain theories and models. Three of these approaches stem from academic disciplines. The micro level of psychological approach concentrates on conflict within and among human beings as individuals, specifically on interpersonal and intrapersonal and small group behavior variables that affect conflict causes, dynamics, and outcomes. Second, the macro level of sociological approach focuses on groups, departments, divisions, and even whole organizations as units of analysis for understanding conflict dynamics. Further, some micro-level researchers concentrate on the functions and dysfunctions of social conflict, as well as analysis of conflict at societal level, according to Dahrendorf in 1959, you see, and Mark in 1906. So this is not new. We have always been involved in conflicts. I can mention as a third approach that employs economic analysis and in particular applies models of economic rationality to individual decision or decision making, and even to complex social behavior. One example of this approach is game theory, which abstracts from situations of interdependence the parties' alternative courses of action, the parties' preferences and possible outcomes, and then prescribes rational choice behavior. Another example of economic analysis in this regard is the work on exit, voice, and loyalty, which offers a rational explanation of why some consumers who are dissatisfied in conflict with companies stay and fight rather than switch to other companies' producers. More recently, the exit voice loyalty model has been applied to the study of labor unions in their efforts to resolve conflicts with employers. Very interesting. We can add to these three research approaches closely tied to disciplines. There are three approaches to conflict which owe their origins to specific problem area applications. The labor relations approach. This is, we can mention as the fourth approach, which is originated from an interest in understanding and influencing the practice of industrial relations. It has also done heavily from the disciplines of economics and psychology. Cohan and Vierna in 1983 observed industrial relations research in the USA. And they say that it has maintained a coherent and consistent set of assumptions about the nature and role of conflict within organizations around issues pertaining to the determination and administration of the employment relationship. Recent research has focused more heavily on the determinants and consequences of workplace conflict resolution mechanisms and techniques. We can say that a fifth approach to the study of conflict is bargaining and negotiation, which arose from the frequent use of these processes in labor relations and international relations. Early researchers in these areas enumerated sets of principles for effective negotiations. We can say that social psychologists have created an entire subdiscipline of research on the interpersonal aspects of these processes. More contemporary researchers have blended or cross-pollinated the discipline-based models or focused on specific applications such as to labor relations. The dispute in resolution represents a sixth approach to the study of conflict. Like the two previous approaches, this research has stimulated by concerns about more effective resolution of labor and international disputes, and emphasizes the actions taken by parties external to conflict to resolve it or to restore effective negotiations. Early studies focused on third-party styles and effectiveness in arbitration, mediation, and process consultation, while more contemporary approaches have sought to integrate third-party intervention into broad understanding of the causes and dynamics of conflict itself. So, if we underline all models of conflict, there are certain approaches or perspective on the social phenomenon. Within eclectic literature on conflict research, it is possible to identify more approaches. And the common conflict resolution is based on misunderstanding. And that is what we set up some models of organizational conflict. Conflict researchers is very interesting because we do have conflict researchers, especially social psychologists, were preoccupied with efforts to define conflict and to describe its primary causes. For example, Mack and Snyder in 1957 described conflict as a particular kind of social interaction process between parties who have mutually exclusive or incompatible values. Bernard in 1957 and Dodge in 1973 offer similar views, but other definitions of conflict abound. Further theorists have debated the relative importance of such definitional matters as the outcomes of conflict versus the process. The goals of the parties versus the actions. According to Golding in 1862, and the objective versus perceived incompatibility of goals and actions. So, models of negotiation and bargaining. Negotiation is the key word and has been defined as the deliberate interaction of two or more complex social units which are attempting to define and redefine the terms of their interdependence. This definition appears applicable to individuals as well as to groups and organizations. It also treats negotiation as a broader process than bargaining, which Gulliver in 1979 defines as the presentation and exchange of more or less specific proposals for the terms of agreement on particular issues. The broader interaction, whether labeled negotiation or bargaining on both, has been approached by researchers in various ways. So, conflict is a phenomenon that cannot be avoided in human life, including in the context of office administration. Conflict can occur due to various factors, such as differences in interests, goals, values, or communication styles. If not managed well, conflict can have a negative impact on the organization, such as reduced productivity, increased stress, and damaged interpersonal relationships. Therefore, it is important for organizations to have an effective conflict management strategy. Effective conflict management can increase collaboration, innovation, and job satisfaction, as well as prevent conflict escalation that is detrimental to the organization, and can help organizations to manage conflict productively and not cause negative impacts. Conflict is not always detrimental, but can also be beneficial in the long term. Meanwhile, according to the interactionists' view, important people who are focused on interaction of people, and they say that conflict is something that must be stimulated because conflict can encourage change in the organization. There is not a single organization or company that has never experienced conflict, both internal and external. Conflict will only disappear along with the disappearance of society itself. in order to contribute ideas regarding conflict resolution, in order to change behavior and make the parties in conflict aware of their mistakes, awareness of mistakes is able to increase productivity and is not detrimental, but instead brings wisdom and benefits to the organization, company. So, as we are here for talking about that, the conflict is not a problem, the conflict is a challenge. And the conflict exists since we are human beings and we live in a society. And we cannot focus on the problem itself because we think something is a problem when it takes us time to give a solution. A problem for one company can be a benefit for another company. When I go as a coach to companies, when they call me, please, can you work on my human resources? Yes. First, I want to know how you organize your company. I want to meet the bosses because I want to make the bosses become leaders. This is important because the leader has good skills of managing conflict resolution skills, because we human beings are not born knowing everything. We learn processes, we get skills on the way we live according to our environment, according to our context. This is important. How you were treated as a child is also important. Psychologists go back to your childhood to understand your adulthood. It makes sense. And in the company, I want to understand how they started in order to know how they managed or how they run the company, because companies grow. And when you grow, you cannot manage your company the same way as in your beginnings. You have to learn things. Leadership motivates people to have been followed by others, to copy your manners, to imitate your achievedness. This is important. So the conflict is a matter of a disruption of well-being. Because if I don't feel well, it's because something affects my actions. And that is what I take as a conflict. Look, probably we have conflicts, but we don't know. Example, we cannot be good at people. It means that we are not gold to be loved by all the people. On our living, there are people who want or who do not like the way we are. But if we are human beings, we are good professionals, but better person, which is a good person. And since we believe in God, and I myself believe in God, and I always feel blessed by my Creator, and I follow the rules to be a good human being, I don't care if people don't like the way I am because I have my values, very high standards. If there are people who want me, example, to go and have some drinks like they do, and they say, you are not my friend anymore because you they might think that for me that is a conflict. But for me, that's not a conflict because I don't care to fix anything in that. I don't care to be with them drinking alcohol until I lose my consciousness. So on the other side, I have to make them think that what they do is not good because they start conflicts with no reason, with something that in common sense you think is bad. The same happens to companies and big organizations. People who lead companies sometimes think what their own interests are the same interests for the company itself without talking to the employees, to the workers. Because leaders in companies or bosses or executive or CEOs can step in making decisions that affect the employees, but they don't know or they don't imagine how much that feeling of uncomfort feeling is going to affect the company. How many companies have closed because of this? So, since you are involved in a society, you have to understand that society. Since you are involved in a team, you have to know your team members. If don't, we cannot mention that as a conflict. We are going to give the name of a disaster. And who can control a disaster? The conflict. We can solve the conflict, but the disasters, no, because the disasters occur. So we have to work after the disaster. But we can work on the conflict to prevent disasters. So my advice to all of us is to hold on, to think very well in what extent this thing that makes you feel uncomfortable can be fixed immediately or will take some time. Don't pretend all the conflicts can be fixed or solved immediately. Sometimes it is necessary to analyze everything, every factors, and to put the things in the right order might take time. But in the meantime, you have to act wisely and to demonstrate that you are working on something. Don't let people think that you are careless of what is happening. Make people think that you are worried. But more than worried, you are concerned of something and you give the importance that it deserves. And that is what people are going to imitate your commitment and will follow you with the same objective, which is the well-being, to hold the bull in the horns and control the things the better, not only you, your team and you do. Don't think about yourself only. Think about everyone that is around you. in the profession that you do. If you're a teacher, think about your students. If you're the CEO, think about the people who belong to your company. And that is the only way to be perfect. No, we are not perfect, but we are working on common sense, conflict resolution, called common sense. Thank you very much. Thanks for this invitation and greetings from Lima, Peru.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Ruben Garcia from Peru. We really, really appreciate this very important information that you've shared with us, especially on conflicts. I think we are really rolling the ball this time around because yesterday throughout we're talking about connection, collaboration, and this morning again we started with communication, and now we're dealing with conflict. I believe that we're gaining more information and we are upgrading ourselves. And that makes it unique when we have great leaders around us so that we can continue to reason together and learn from one another. Like you said, no one is perfect. Like you said, no one knows it all. And transformation is ongoing. So if you want to transform your leadership, your relationship, then you need to keep growing. You need to keep learning. You need to keep sharing, because the more you share, the more you gain. And I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful, the way you've really depth into it is very, very important. I mean, you said something like we have to gain better understanding, because better understanding will make us to resolve these conflicts, which is very important. More negotiation, yes, and then that will reduce, because if we can solve, I like the way that you said that when you visit any organization, you want to know their roots, and for you to know their roots, you want to know their policy. How do they normally undo the conflicts in the organization? Because it's very, very important. And I really appreciate you, sir, this morning for joining us. Thank you so much. Um, Professor Ruben Garcia, our president from Peru. Thank you, sir, for your presence always and for sharing from your wealth of wisdom, knowledge. We
My
appreciate you, sir.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.